So can we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming to this press briefing convened by the IPU mission to the Maldives. We appreciate your coming to obtain information on why we're here and what we're trying to do, and we look forward to fielding questions from you. We just want to point out that our presence here is part of our continuing efforts to promote dialogue between the political actors here and the way forward in resolving the political crisis that the Maldives are facing today. And dialogue for us, I maintain, is the only way forward. We, as the Interparliamentary Union, of course, want to preserve the dignity, the integrity of Parliament as a forum for dialogue, as a forum for the mediation of different views of society. And so we're here, as we have done before, to reiterate the fact that Parliament should seize the initiative and promote itself as the institution that fosters dialogue for the resolution of conflicts. We are here, therefore, to restate the fact that we cannot condone any violence. We don't want any of the sides to the conflict to think that we're here to support any violent acts by them. So we have decided to make this statement very clear. I have with me my colleague, the Right Honourable Paul East from New Zealand, who has joined this mission this time, and he will be taking questions with me from you. But I just wanted to point out again that the current crisis is one for which the Maldivians themselves bear responsibility. It is for them to resolve the crisis. It is not for the international community, including the Interparliamentary Union, to impose any solutions on the Maldives. But we're here to facilitate. We're here to make sure that a dialogue at the end of the day prevails, and that people sit down as responsible stakeholders and decide on the way forward. And we think, therefore, that Parliament, being the legitimate representative institution of state, has a role to play in promoting this dialogue. So those were some of the preliminary comments I thought I should make. I don't know if my colleague Paul East has any comments to make before we take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. I would just like to underline what Martin has said and say that the International Parliamentary Union and myself personally, our main concern is to protect the integrity of parliaments around the world, and particularly with regard to this mission, the integrity and place in society, a democratic society, of the Parliament of the Maldives. So we are naturally concerned that there have been threats of violence, and there continue to be, and we see no place for violence in the resolution of any of these conflicts. That was the basis for having a press conference today, because there have been concerns expressed to us, and we wanted to make it absolutely clear that we saw violence as having no part in the peaceful resolution of the crisis which faces the country. So with that, I'm very happy to answer any questions along with my colleague Martin.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Said from Javier Daily. Could you please tell me what's the result of your talks this time with the political parties, as the Parliament is in a deadlock?
We're only been here today. We are still undertaking consultations with the various stakeholders, and I think it's too early for us to draw conclusions on what would be the situation tomorrow or any day thereafter. So if you bear with us, we will continue these consultations, and hopefully we can come to some understanding on the way forward.
I think it's fair to say that we're still having our discussions today, and further parties that we're meeting this afternoon. So in that regard, it's still work in progress. And so we haven't certainly given up or put to one side hoping to get a resolution to these issues, particularly as regards the Parliament.
Are there any hope that we can open the Majlis tomorrow?
Well, that's a very pertinent question, of course. And on the one hand, you have threats of violence if the Parliament should open. On the other hand, you have a situation that might be capitulation of those threats of violence if the Parliament didn't open. So it really requires, I think, everybody to step back and try and hold some sensible discussions to see whether there can be any resolution. And we haven't given up on the idea of having that matter resolved before the Parliament opens tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
I'm Latif from News Daily. Now, we have I have a little different question. Now, for an example, of course, peace and harmony is most important, but we also have a law. If somebody violates the law, how it should be treated, even including in the Parliament. Like, for an example, I have a must that I should pray 5 times a day. When I go to the mosque, there's a person standing there with a gun, not to allow me inside. So, for peace and harmony, I walk back. So, like that, do you think for me, I have to walk back all the time just to give the harmony, or I should be allowed? I should have the legitimacy or the law where I can enter the mosque? Because this, why I am raising this question is because as far as the circumstance now we are hearing, it's not possible. There's no possibility that MDP will allow this session will go off. So in that case also, for an example, like the first day, if for the peace and harmony, if they just keep continuing without the open sessions and using the powers that speaker have, do you think we can continue like this for long?
Well, I don't want to be drawn on the positions, and I'm sure neither does Martin, of the various political parties in this matter. But I have to say that the discussions we've had to date haven't convinced us that there can't be some sort of agreement reached between those parties on the way forward for the future of the Maldives and its political processes. I don't think yet every option has been explored. And I think Martin would agree with me in that regard. So we want to avoid the possibility of having bloodshed and violence until those opportunities are finally exhausted. That's the reason. It's not a question of arriving at the mosque and somebody with a gun telling you to go home. It's a question of, have you explored every possible option before you try and enforce the laws that will require these demonstrations to be dealt with perhaps quite severely.
Okay, so just part of my question. Now, for an example, from even before the meeting first scheduled for the 1st of March, there were discussions. And for the last these 18 days also, still the negotiations are continuing. And tomorrow the time is for 10 o'clock. So even by then, if it is not solved, just can we be hoping or praying that something will happen tomorrow and again to prolong like that? And because actually the Maldives is not one single party. Maldives have about 14 parties, and out of that 5-6 are large parties. So just because one party wants to stop something, now we have 3 pillars in our government. That is Majlis plus the government plus the judiciary. So if somebody wants to stop one of these things, just if one single party, I'm not just referring to MDP, I'm saying any single party who wants to stop any of these things, how long we should allow that to happen? How long should the speaker allow this to go on?
Well, it's my view that you should continue with the discussions as long as possible if there is the prospect of violence replacing those discussions. So at some stage you'll have to take a decision if the talks have been dragged out unnecessarily, but I don't think we've reached that stage yet.
What you mean to say is, do you think that the rescheduling of the opening of Parliament has come too soon?
No, I think that's a question for the Speaker to decide upon, but I'm saying that perhaps there's a possibility of resolving it. 2 options. 1, a possibility of resolving it between, well, 3 options. 1, a possibility of resolving it between now and tomorrow. 2, postponing it tomorrow while talks still continue. Or 3, the Parliament is open and there's a considerable amount of violence. So we have to weigh up those 3 options are for the party leaders and the Speaker to weigh up, not for us. All we can do is try and assist with the dialogue that goes on.
That's right. We are not here, as I mentioned earlier, we're not here to impose any decisions on the Maldivians. At the end of the day, the authorities bear responsibility for their decisions. We're here to facilitate. And as an institution dedicated to dialogue, we think that dialogue should be given a chance. whatever the circumstances. And if at the end of the day the matters are resolved peacefully, I think it would have been worth the trouble.
So as it stands now, the parties have not come to a common understanding pertaining to the reconvening of Parliament tomorrow.
We as I say, we are still in the process of carrying out those consultations. It would be unfair to say that the parties have not come to an understanding. We are still talking to the various parties, and maybe at the end of the day today we will know where each party stands on the convening or not convening of Parliament, and we can draw the necessary conclusions. But wherever we're going, we're telling them that they should continue to dialogue, and also display restraint in statements and pronouncements that are made, because if there's that restraint, this can help to allay the fears and tensions in society.
So I have a question. That is, now for an example, when the NDP is calling now for a date without opening of the Majlis, but if we, when we as the media, when we count back about 6 months, about 6 to 10 months before, actually in 2008 campaign, President Nasheed promised that he will have a midterm election, and it was not held. So media and a lot of authorities, they question why you are not having it. He has committed, he has stated, given a lot of statements in the media that midterm election cannot be held without changing the constitution. And he was, at that time the majority was with the opposition. So he has blamed opposition very much for not amending the constitution to allow the midterm election. So the same president is now demanding the midterm election without amending the constitution. Do you think these are the things that IPU will think of?
I think that these are things that have to be put on the table and discussed properly with all the parties concerned. And the very fact that certain things didn't happen in the past, it does not mean that they cannot be resolved, they cannot be settled in a better way. But it is through dialogue. It is not for us as the Interparliamentary Union to come and question why that didn't happen. It is for us to facilitate dialogue between all stakeholders to come to a common understanding on the way forward. That's our position.
Adding to what Mr. Lateef said earlier, if the Speaker does decide to remove, MDP legislators who are stymieing the Parliament session, how the IPU perceive the situation if that does come to pass tomorrow?
We are on record in saying that we want Parliament as the legitimate representative institution of the country to function normally, to be convened under conducive conditions. We are on record in saying that Parliament, as elected by the people, should be allowed to function, and that nobody has the right to impede the functioning of Parliament. But when we say conducive environment, we're hoping that there's some broad agreement between all the parties to use Parliament as the forum for democratic debate and compromise. So obviously, your constitutional standing orders may empower the Speaker to remove members of Parliament from the chamber. Of course, politically we don't know if that's right, but we leave that to the Maldivian authorities to decide on what they want to do. We are not policemen to come and tell them you should do this or not do this. But we would like, our prime consideration is for Parliament to function normally under conducive conditions where everybody who is willing to take part in the debates has that possibility of taking part in the debates. Paul?
I agree entirely. I wouldn't have